Before we begin, I just want to express my sincerest apologies to Sam Smith. In my Spectre video on Double November, I accidentally misidentified him by the common hetero identifications, not realizing that, in fact, Sam Smith identifies as non-binary. I was not aware of this fact. Unfortunately, when you're trying to get a bunch of videos out on deadline, you tend to skimp on certain details, small but unfortunately very important details, and this passed me by. Fortunately, Devo was there to remind me about this, but unfortunately long after the video was uploaded. So I want to take this opportunity to apologize to him and of course to anyone else who identifies as non-binary. I am sorry for the oversight, and hopefully I can definitely not miss out on these very important details for future videos. And I want to say this now principally because we're approaching the time of the year where people should endeavor to try to better themselves for the sake of a peaceful coexistence with other people all around them. So with that in mind, let's jump in.
Abundance, charity, goodwill toward men. Get with the spirit, 'cause you're gonna hear it again.
You love nothing quite so much as gold, Ebenezer.
I hope to be another man from what I was, but the night is waning fast, and it is precious time. Let me love till I die, and God bless us,
And God bless us, everyone!
We're back again on this Christmas season in the year of our Satan 2020. Yes, this has been a bitch of a year, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people who normally have big epic plans for this year have in no doubt been curtailed because of everything that's been happening around you. So hopefully you're trying to make the best of a really bad situation, and unfortunately it can't be avoided the knowledge that a lot of this came to pass because of some really bad people who hopefully will concede, you asshole. But this is the time of the year where we try to find the best in even the worst of us. And what better story encapsulates that concept better than A Christmas Carol? As you know, when we start all of our Christmas reviews, we always start with a random adaptation of A Christmas Carol. I remembered this time. Now, in the past 2 years, I reviewed 2 really good movies. Now, I wanted to actually veer into some of the lesser adaptations to see if there's anything of value in there, to find out if this story truly works no matter how lackluster the adaptation is. And I did a poll on Twitter, and the one that overwhelmingly got positive response, much to my surprise actually, was in fact A Christmas Carol the Musical, which came out in 2004, which was released by the Hallmark company, and it was a TV movie which stars Kelsey Grammer, Jane Krakowski, Jesse L. Martin, Geraldine Chaplin, and Jason Alexander. And this musical has lyrics by Lynn Ahrens, who Broadway buffs, of course, will know from Seussical the Musical, Ragtime, Once on This Island, Lucky Stiff is a personal favorite of mine, and the musical was done by Disney impresario Alan Menken, a person who's pretty much made his name because of Disney, but he also did a Little Shop of Horrors, and also was the lead composer on the utterly wonderful and incredibly underrated Gallivant. So this time they bring their own talents to this adaptation of A Christmas Carol. Now, this TV movie is a film adaptation of the Broadway musical that usually plays seasonally in the New York theater circuit come Christmas time. Now, when you say the words Kelsey Grammer as Ebenezer Scrooge, not gonna lie, that actually sounds like a very intriguing prospect, because of course he is a wonderful actor. He's one of those actors that seems to elevate lame material. Even in the weakest of movies, he always seems to bring something of a gravitas to it. So the idea of him playing Ebenezer Scrooge is not a bad idea. The question is, does it work in this particular film adaptation? Now, this may be one of the most lackluster adaptations of A Christmas Carol that I've ever seen. I know that this was done as a TV movie, so of course it's going to be on a TV movie budget. The great thing about low budget cinema is that when you have a filmmaker who is good with his budget and knows where to put the money and who knows how to compensate for what little resources he has, a good filmmaker can still make $2 million look like $20 million. But unfortunately, you can tell that this was in the hands of a filmmaker that pretty much was doing this for the paycheck. There's very little passion in the way he films all the musical numbers. There's very little passion in any frame of film. And I will say this starting out. If there's any discrepancy with this film, if there's any ruination to the film's potential, it all comes down to the direction. And this could actually, I would actually put this as a prime example of what happens when your director is lackluster. Because I will say every bit of potential this production actually could have had was squandered by really bad decisions when it came to the adaptation. I suspect this might be like one of those stock movie sets that they usually have like whenever anyone wants to do a period drama, especially in Victorian England. The sets look great, but there's a hitch to it. Unfortunately, the director refuses to light it with any sort of sense of atmosphere to it, and as a result, the whole film looks painfully staged. It looks way too stagey. The director, Arthur Allen Seidelman, I looked up his resume. The guy has a long, seasoned career doing films for television, so he really has no excuse for half-assing it like this. Or either that, or the fact that maybe because he's only worked on television, he only knows how to do things visually on a television level, and maybe he's never really been able to branch out as far as being able to cultivate anything resembling kind of visual flair. Because one of the major problems with this film is that because he lights it in a way that you pretty much expect that there's a studio audience, whenever there's any exterior shot, you never get the vibe that it's a cold winter because it looks too damn bright. And if you've ever been to London in the midst of winter, there's going to be fog. It's going to be wet. It's going to be uncomfortable. Even the Muppets got this shit right. And because this director failed to sell the atmosphere, that really hurt a lot of the scenes as they needed to appear. It really hurt the Ghost of Christmas Future sequence. It hurt a lot of scenes which really should have felt either more terrifying or more poignant, because the director really doesn't take the time to make the atmosphere feel rich or genuine. And you also get the feeling that he had no concept of tone as far as to tell the story. What could have had some potential to be a unique adaptation of A Christmas Carol, there could have been some really unique ways to tell a story that has been told ad nauseum. A good example is the Jacob Marley scene. I hold the Jacob Marley scene very close to my heart, principally because I actually played the character once, as I believe I may have previously mentioned. And I always feel that scene needs to be terrifying. Even the Muppets were able to remind you that this is not a happy fate. Even though it's a humorous scene, they still had a song that actually hit home the dramatic weight of what could potentially befall Scrooge if he does not change his ways. And the thing is about this scene, with the ingredients that they present you here with skeletons and zombies, with these very abstract tortures, like one with, opens his heart and gold comes out, just the idea that you're seeing all these other spirits and you're seeing these skeletons and all that stuff. If you had a director who had a better concept on the tone that he should be employing in the use of this scene, this could have been a potentially great musical adaptation of it, because the song is not that bad. But again, because of the staging and because of the tone that they're going for, and as much as I respect Jason Alexander, particularly as a musical performer, this was not the character he should have played. Honestly, he could have been a pretty good Bob Cratchit, to be honest. But no, Jacob Marley was pretty much one of the worst characters you could have had him play, because it's Jason Alexander, and it's very seldom that you can ever see him play a character with any sort of dramatic weight, especially one who's as vital as Jacob Marley is. And it was a fail. It was a big fail. So this kind of leads me to another issue I have. Now, I'm not going to diss Alan Menken or Lynn Ahrens. In fact, actually, Lynn Ahrens I think gets off a bit because her lyrics, for the most part, are actually pretty serviceable. Alan Menken, some of his songs may have been a little wonky when it comes to, again, tone is a big issue. He kind of falls into a similar trap as to the reason why I can't stand Rajan Hammerstein. Some scenes that should be very sad and dramatic, he kind of adds a little kind of bubbliness to them, because that could also be a failing of the musical director. That they may also be another person just vying for a paycheck and just decides to conduct the music in a tone that hints that it's going to be more comedic. And if there's any place you don't do overly comedic, You don't do it with Jacob Marley. You can have a little bit of dark humor, but you can't go overboard with it. It ruins any sort of intimidation that the scene is supposed to have. What a lot of filmmakers forget is that Charles Dickens did intend this to be a ghost story. It is a ghost story. It's just a ghost story with a very happy message. It's a story with some incredibly dark elements to it. And in order to make you care about the stakes, you gotta hit that home at the beginning. And that's why the Marley scene is so important. And the movie fails in that front. Now, it sounds like I'm going to be blaming the director for everything, and while I will say a lot of the problems I'm going to mention otherwords do kind of stem from him, I will still say the actor should still compensate for lackluster direction. Many great performances have still come in lieu of the fact that the director may have been an idiot. Now, Kelsey Grammer, again, wonderful actor. I don't know if it was a matter of the director or maybe it was just bad instincts, but his performance as Scrooge is not as good as it could ever possibly be. It's not just him. You look at all the actors involved and you get the vibe that they may have felt that this performance may work like on stage. They may have fallen into what I call the Broderick trap, like when Matthew Broderick reprised the role of Leo Bloom in The Producers movie, and unfortunately he was giving a stage performance on film, and because Susan Stroman wasn't really a good film director, she never really corrected him on that. When I watch Kelsey Grammer's performance in this movie, you feel like this could be so much better on stage. Because I will say the one problem with acting for film is that there is something of a disconnect between the actor and the audience, and sometimes an actor brings their A game because they can feed symbiotically off the energy from an audience. And that overall, I think, is where I feel like this whole adaptation of A Christmas Carol probably works a hell of a lot better. I think this needed to be on stage, and I don't think it ever should have been made into a film. But that's Hallmark for you. Kelsey Grammer spends the entire movie with this disgusted squint on his face like he's watching a Serbian film while sitting next to a consistently farting dog. You have to be invested in Scrooge, and if you don't have a performance that is able to carry that weight, then that's another fail. I will say this, he is surrounded by very able support. Of course, the spirits, you have Jane Krakowski playing the Ghost of Christmas Past. She actually plays it almost like kind of a, I guess you could say like a nymph or a fairy, very, very fae. Like, in fae as in like fairy. And she does capture that kind of ethereal spirit to it. She definitely sings it wonderfully, and she definitely has the presence for it. I think the major hitch with it, though, is that it's a one-note performance. She is on that note, and she doesn't really evolve from there. The character is a very ethereal and very warming and very inviting presence, but there are moments where the Ghost of Christmas Past gets dead serious and hits home some very dark points, and that's essential. But the problem is with Jane Krakowski is that she is on this level and she never really goes beyond that. So while Jane Krakowski definitely has the right idea, I think this might have something to do with the director, but even then, she never takes the idea further than where she starts with. I'm going out of order by level of ascent. The Ghost of Christmas Future is actually played by Geraldine Chaplin. That's an inspired casting idea. And I was actually getting excited when she shows up on the scene. Now, one thing I actually should point out, which is a very popular thing that many stage adaptations of A Christmas Carol do, is that many times while Scrooge is tromping through the streets of London, he'll see people on the streets, and you'll find out later on that these actors are the ones who are going to wind up playing all the spirits later on down the line. And I've always loved that. In the productions I've done in the past, we did that, and it was always wonderful. I always dug it. I always thought it was great. And this one does it, and that got me really excited. So during the course of that, he runs into a better woman, a la Sweeney Todd, and she's played by Geraldine Chaplin. And when the Ghost of Christmas Future comes along, that's who it is. It's this wizened hunched over old lady in worn black cloaks, and she has this corpse-like face. And I actually got really, really excited because I had never seen a Ghost of Christmas Future that looked like that. And it was one of the few times I was like, this could be inspired. But then she does this Beauty and the Beast style transformation with the sparklies and the tinkly music, and then all of a sudden turns into a ethereal ghost, and it just lost me. You had it and you blew it. And unfortunately, that pretty much led to the chain of disappointments that would come from the entirety of the Ghost of Christmas Future segment. And I've noticed in a lot of lackluster adaptations of A Christmas Carol that sometimes if it's a really bored production, if the filmmaker really doesn't give a shit, sometimes they will rush on through the Ghost Christmas Future segment. That is absolute bullshit. Any filmmaker that does that needs to just give up their trade right now, because one of the most important sequences in this story is the Ghost Christmas Future segment. Scrooge dreads the spirit, and it's through that dread that the audience themselves are terrified by this notion too. They just bullet point everything. They set the entire thing in the graveyard, where they just have like minimalist theater productions of what everyone's doing all around Scrooge. And I was like, okay, I guess you're trying to meet the runtime, but because I'm not feeling a damn thing here. I remember when I first saw the Mickey's Christmas Carol and they got to this segment, even if it was mainly like 5 minutes, they were still able to hit home all the beats that needed to be hit home. They were able to make it sad, but ultimately when they needed to make it scary, damn did they make it scary. It just felt lazy. Now, this is a quirk that tends to permeate throughout the entire film. You can tell in their efforts to try to be different, they do some really odd placement as far as like the traditional scenes go. I mean, a lot of times they'll have certain segments that take place like maybe a little bit later. They bring it somewhere earlier into the fray. Or sometimes because they just want to get a whole bunch of info dumps out of the way, they truncate it into one spot. And any adaptation of A Christmas Carol begins on the streets of London, where you're seeing the people of London all getting ready for Christmas. You're seeing a bunch of people of different levels of class and different levels of society, some being generous, some being apathetic. And then, of course, Scrooge comes in and and everyone reacts accordingly to him, and he in turn to them. This particular film opens in a savings and loan, where, yeah, that's what you're going to find Scrooge. But at the same time, though, it's really odd that practically everyone in London is showing up at this bank. I mean, granted, yes, it is Christmas Eve, but even then, it's everyone of every kind of persuasion showing up at this one savings and loan where you have carolers here. I've been to banks, and I've never seen a bank that has a goddamn set of carolers. No. Maybe some Barry Manilow on the speaker, but no. But they do this so that way when Scrooge shows up, they can knock out a whole bunch of things that happen in the first scene of A Christmas Carol, such as the people asking for donations, even appearance by some poor people that Scrooge, gives the shaft to. And they even have an appearance by Tiny Tim. And it's just odd. It's just the placement of a lot of the traditional scenes are weird. And if they really wanted to free up some running time, maybe they could get rid of some superfluous scenes that they add in just for the sake of being different. Like there's a really weird scene where you're seeing Bob Cratchit with Tiny Tim. There's an incredibly superfluous scene in this movie where you're watching Tiny Tim and Bob Cratchit buy the freaking chicken. I've never seen any adaptation prior to this that actually dwelled on where they got the chicken. Why? It kills like about a good 3 minutes of screen time. 3 minutes that probably could have been spent giving a bit more weight and gravitas to the Ghost Christmas Future segment. I'm dwelling, but you get my drift. I haven't gotten to him yet, so you're probably wondering, how's the Ghost Christmas present? He is definitely the one who stands out among the rest. And of course, it helps that he's played by Jesse L. Martin. Unlike his counterparts, he actually tries to give levels to his performance. Now, he definitely nails the whimsy to it. He definitely has the showy atmosphere. He definitely has the joie de vivre, which is necessary to it. And I will say at the tail end, when he is grilling Scrooge and turning his words back on him, Jesse L. Martin does some incredible stuff in that scene. Granted, the staging is weird and it just comes out of left field, but you tend to forgive it because, again, Jesse L. Martin does such a great job of delivering that bit. So that is definitely the shining star of this entire production. Now, as far as his entire segment goes, I think with a bit more discipline, it could have been really great. But the one thing they do is that of course, he takes Scrooge to all the key places he visits through there, and then it all culminates into a big number. Now, I suspect with a better director, with a better sense of editing, and with a better sense of arranging of the music, I actually think this could have been an amazing, like, all-encompassing montage of the entire Ghost Christmas Present sequence. It could have been actually quite wonderful. Yes, I'm going round and round, but I think it all just comes down to the fact that this is a production that fell victim to a director who was practically on autopilot and just wanted to earn a quick Christmas paycheck. And that's a shame because, frankly, this story always deserves the best. Even in some of the other lackluster productions, you always get the vibe that the filmmakers want to make this adaptation. But this one just felt like a bunch of actors getting together, doing something which is going to guarantee ratings come Christmas time, And because everyone knows that Christmas Carol is gangbusters when it comes to ratings and when it comes to box office. So that's just the feeling I kept getting throughout the entire production, and that's just a damn shame. Is this an absolute disaster? You know what? I'd still have a lot of other adaptations I need to see, but this one is definitely one I will not be revisiting in years to come. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think that this one is one of the best adaptations of A Christmas Carol? Or do you think that this is just a waste of time and this is another Hallmark card that should just go in the garbage? Leave it all in the comments below. And for more festive content on Narcotic Casserole, simply like, share, subscribe, click. Thou shall be served. And incidentally, if you want to see another review of this ill-fated production, I strongly recommend you go visit Diva and Musical Hell, where she reviewed this production first. That's where I first became aware of it. And of course, it's Diva. It's Musical Hell. She's hilarious. She's amazing. She's brilliant. Check it out. Keep it here on Narcotic Casserole because we're going to have a lot of great festive content in the month to come. So, see ya.